She took the folder off my desk like it already belonged to her. Didn't knock. Didn't ask. Just walked into my home office while I was on a call, picked it up, flipped through the first few pages and set it back down with this look on her face, like she'd just confirmed something she'd already suspected. I finished my call. I didn't say anything. That was 3 weeks before everything fell apart. My sister-in-law's name is Portia. She married my brother Declan 6 years ago, and from the first Thanksgiving she showed up to, I knew exactly who she was. Not in a dramatic way, not in a movie villain way, just in the quiet, certain way you know, when someone is always calculating what they can get from a room. Declan never saw it. He's 4 years older than me and he's been looking out for me since our dad died when I was 11. So when Portia came along and started being sweet to him, I think part of him just wanted to believe it. He's not stupid. He's just loyal to a fault. And Portia knew that. I'm 31. I work in federal contract compliance, which sounds boring, and in most ways it is, but what it means practically is that I know exactly how government-issued assets are classified, tracked, and transferred. I know what paperwork looks like when it's real, and what it looks like when someone has tried to make it look real. I've been doing it for 7 years. I work from home 3 days a week, which is how Portia knew my schedule well enough to walk in when she thought I wasn't paying attention. What was in that folder was none of her business. But the fact that she touched it told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. My mother passed 8 months ago. Breast cancer, diagnosed late, gone faster than any of us were ready for. She was 58. She was the kind of woman who kept birthday cards in a drawer sorted by year, who called you on the anniversary of bad things just to say she was thinking about you, who made coffee too strong and laughed too loud and took up exactly the right amount of space. She left a will. The house, the one she'd lived in for 22 years, the one my father built the back deck on before he died, she left to both of us, me and Declan, equal split. Either we sell and divide, or one of us buys the other out. That was her wish. That was what she signed. Portia had a different idea. I found out about it the way I find out about most things. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in pieces that don't seem connected until suddenly they do. A mention here, a comment there. The way Portia started referring to the house as eventually ours. The way she said it in front of Declan, and he didn't correct her. Then Declan called me one Sunday afternoon. He sounded rehearsed. Portia and I have been talking, he said, and we think the cleanest thing would be for us to just take over the house. Keep it in the family. You'd get a payment, obviously. What kind of payment? A pause. We're thinking around $40,000. The house is worth $460,000. I didn't say anything for a moment. I was sitting at my kitchen table and I was looking at the grain of the wood and I was doing the math I already knew. I'll think about it, I said. I didn't think about it. I spent the next 6 days pulling together everything I needed. Here is what Portia didn't know about that folder she picked up. It wasn't about the house. It was about a federal equipment grant. 4 years ago, my mother applied for and received a heritage preservation grant through the Department of the Interior. The property, because of the age of the original structure and its historical registry status in the county, qualified for a matching fund to restore the original 1940s outbuildings on the back of the lot. My mother used it properly. She had the work done. She filed the completion report. All of it was above board, but part of the grant agreement included a deed restriction. Specific language. The property could not be sold, transferred, or substantially altered for a period of 10 years from the date of the grant, without triggering a federal clawback of the funds plus interest. The restriction was recorded with the county. It was in the title documentation. It wasn't hidden. It just wasn't the kind of thing you'd notice unless you knew what to look for. My mother knew. She'd told me about it once, offhandedly, when I asked why she hadn't refinanced. I don't think she ever told Declan. I know she never told Portia. The restriction didn't prevent either of us from inheriting. It didn't prevent a buyout between co-owners. What it prevented was a sale or transfer to an outside party for 6 more years. And more importantly, it meant that any attempt to refinance, leverage, or transfer the property without federal notification would put the new owner in direct violation of a recorded federal agreement. Portia's plan which I'd pieced together from 3 separate conversations I wasn't supposed to hear, was to push me out fast, take over the house, immediately take out a home equity line of credit against it, and use that money to fund a business she'd been trying to launch for 2 years. Clean. Simple. My name off the deed, their name on it, cash in hand within 60 days. Except, you cannot take out a HELOC on a federally restricted property without notifying the administering agency. The lender would catch it during title review. If they were thorough, or if they weren't, the couple would be in violation of the grant terms the moment the funds moved. Either way, it wasn't going to go the way Portia had planned. I didn't tell her any of this. I let her plan. The pressure started on a Tuesday. Portia texted me, not Declan, Portia, asking when I was going to be ready to sign. I told her I was still reviewing my options. She sent back a string of messages about how it wasn't fair to hold up Declan's future, how I was being selfish, how my mother would have wanted us to move forward. That last one sat in my chest like a stone. I put my phone down. I made coffee. I looked at the chair my mother used to sit in when she came to visit. Then I picked my phone back up and texted back. I want to make sure we do this right. Give me until the end of the month. She agreed. I could feel the confidence in her message even through text. The next 2 weeks were quiet on the surface. Underneath, I was working. I contacted the regional office of the Department of the Interior that administered the grant. I wasn't reporting anything yet. I just wanted written confirmation of the restriction status, the current clawback terms, and the notification requirements for any title transaction. The woman I spoke with was thorough and helpful. She emailed me a formal status letter within 3 days. I also called a real estate attorney, not to fight, just to understand exactly where I stood and exactly what language I'd need. And I did one more thing. I called my brother, not to warn him, not yet. I called him because I wanted to hear his voice and figure out how much of this was him and how much was her. We talked for 40 minutes. He asked about my job. He asked if I'd eaten. He sounded like my brother, the one who taught me to drive in an empty parking lot, the one who slept on my couch the week after my first real breakup, the one who cried at my mother's graveside and didn't try to hide it. He also, near the end, said, "Portia really thinks this is the best path forward for everyone." There it was. I said, "Okay, I hear you." The meeting was Portia's idea. She wanted to do it at the house. My mother's house, which I thought said everything about her read on who had the power in this situation. I agreed. I brought the attorney's letter and the DOI status letter and one other document, a formal counter-proposal for a proper co-owner, buyout structured within the grant restrictions, legal, clean. Me walking away with my fair share, them keeping the house, everyone in the clear. It was more than fair. It was actually generous. Portia didn't look at it. She had her own folder. I noticed it on the kitchen table when I walked in. Same kitchen table where my mother used to do crosswords on Saturday mornings, same table where we'd sat for every holiday meal I could remember. Portia was standing at the counter. Declan was by the window. He didn't quite meet my eyes. "We've had a title attorney look at this," Portia said, sliding her folder across the table. "It's straightforward. You sign, we pay you, we move forward." I looked at the number on the offer sheet. $42,000. She'd gone up $2,000. I set my own folder on the table. "Before you go further," I said, "I need you to look at something." I'd thought about how I was going to do this 100 times. I'd thought about being angry. I'd thought about being cold. What I actually felt, standing in my mother's kitchen, was something closer to sad. For Declan, mostly. For what this was going to do to his idea of his marriage. I slid the DOI letter across first. I explained what the grant was. I explained the restriction. I watched Portia's expression go through about 4 stages in the span of 30 seconds. Confusion, then calculation, then something harder. "That doesn't affect an internal family transfer," she said. "It affects any title transaction that triggers notification requirements," I said, "including a buyout at undervalue between co-inheritors when one party has documented plans to leverage the asset in a way that violates federal terms." I'd practiced that sentence. "Your lender will find this in title review. If they miss it and you draw on the HELOC, you're in violation. The clawback amount at current terms is approximately $218,000. Portia went very still, Declan said. What? I looked at my brother, my actual brother. I'm not saying this to blow anything up, I said. I'm saying this because this is the situation, and I need you to understand it before you make any decisions. How do you know about the HELOC? Portia asked. And that was the tell. Because I hadn't said HELOC, I'd said leverage. I'd been careful about that. She caught it a second after she said it. I watched her catch it. I know about a lot of things, I said, and I left it there. Declan sat down. The next hour was not comfortable. Portia argued that the restriction could be challenged, that their attorney hadn't mentioned it, that I was misinterpreting the terms. I gave her the attorney's name at the DOI office and suggested she call. She didn't call in the room, but I could see her computing. At some point, Declan asked me to walk outside with him. We stood on the back deck, the deck my father built, and neither of us said anything for a while. She told me it was simple, he said finally. I know. She said the house stuff was just a formality. The house stuff is never just a formality, I said. He looked out at the yard. The old outbuildings that the grant had restored were visible from where we stood. They looked better than they ever had when we were kids. My mother had been proud of them. She didn't tell you about the grant, I said. Not a question. He shook his head. She didn't tell you what she was planning to do with the equity. He was quiet for a moment. She said she had a business idea she was excited about. Declan. He looked at me. I'm not your enemy, I said. I never was. We stood there for another few minutes. Then we went back inside. Portia was on her phone. She put it away when we came in. Her face was arranged into something careful. I'd like to propose something, I said. I opened my folder and put my counter-proposal on the table. This is structured within the restriction. It protects both of you. It gives me what the property is actually worth to me. No federal exposure, clean title, no clawback risk. I paused. Or we can continue the way you were going, and we can find out together what the DOI office says when they receive a notification of a non-compliant title transaction. I wasn't threatening. I was just describing reality. Portia looked at the proposal. She looked at it for a long time. She didn't say anything gracious. She didn't apologize. What she did was pick up a pen and say, "What do we need to sign?" It took another 3 weeks to finalize through the attorneys. The number we landed on was fair. Not what the house was worth on the open market, but what my mother had intended when she left it to both of us. I walked away with something I could live with. Declan kept the house. The HELOC never happened. I don't know if that was because Portia dropped the plan, or because she realized it wasn't going to work, and I didn't ask. What I know is that 2 months after everything was settled, Declan called me on a Sunday afternoon again. He sounded different from the last time, less rehearsed. I've been thinking, he said. About what? About how you handled all of that. I didn't say anything. You could have just reported it, he said. The thing with the restriction. You could have let us walk into it and... He stopped. That wasn't what I wanted, I said. I know. A long pause. She's not. We're working through some things. I didn't ask. It wasn't my place. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he said, for letting it get to that point. For not. I should have asked more questions. Yeah, I said. You should have. But then, because he's my brother, and he taught me to drive, and he cried at my mother's grave, I said, it's okay. We're okay. We still talk on Sundays. Portia's name doesn't come up much. The house has the same deck my father built, the same outbuildings my mother restored. The deed restriction runs for 4 more years. Some things are protected whether people want them to be or not.